Introducing the Champion's Mindset, the podcast that gives your inner game a serious upgrade. Join internationally renowned mindset and performance expert, Aussie Kathryn Orford.
Why can't I see me, Jason? I can't see me though. Okay. I'll just talk to that very strange gray thing that's bouncing around in front of my face. Hi there, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Champions Mindset podcast. This Sunday afternoon. What is it? The 27th of April. How are you all doing? Please comment below if you are listening to this live. Let us know where you're coming in from and what prompted you to actually join in. Are you a basketball coach? Are you an athlete? Are you a coach of a different type of sport? Or perhaps you're a business person and wanting to check out different ideas and ways that we can tweak your mindset so that you can really excel. Anyway, today, every second week, I will be interviewing a guest. Today, it's just me. And I want to talk to you today about stories. We all have a story. I'm sure you've heard that before, but it's not those sorts of stories I want to talk to you about. Today, I want to talk to you about the stories that we tell ourselves. Because the stories that we tell ourselves and believe are what's running the show. Would you agree? If you're constantly telling yourself, I'm never going to reach my sales target, you're probably not going to reach your sales target. If you are a basketball coach and you're going, oh my goodness, my team is just never going to win their first game, or we're never going to get to the grand final, you're actually sending out that energy. We're made of atoms. It's just basic quantum physics. We are made of energy. We're made of atoms. We're vibrating at a particular frequency, and we're sending out that frequency into the universe. And just like a magnet, it pulls back to us whatever we are putting out there. So, what stories are you telling yourself? And are they actually lifting you up? Or are they pulling you down and keeping you stuck? Like in, what's that stuff like, when you get stuck in, what's it called? When you get stuck in mud and you can't move and you're basically just doing the same thing, or a mouse on a wheel going round and round and round. So we've got hey, Todd. Oh, we can see you, Miss Catherine. Awesome. Thank you for joining. Okay. So the stories that I want to talk to you about are, we all had a favorite storybook, I'm thinking. I certainly did. I used to go to my grandma's on the weekends because I grew up in pubs and mum and dad didn't want me around all the drunks on the weekend. So I go over and spend weekends with my nan and my Auntie Belle. And I still have it after all these years. You can see it's very tattered, but I have kind of kept it together. And it is 365 bedtime stories. And every night, and it's all about this particular street called What a Jolly Street. And there are all the different families that lived on the different places in What a Jolly Street. And each day there was a story. I absolutely adored this book. Honestly, I don't know how old I was when I got it, but I just treasured it for years. I knew every story inside out, back to front, but I still wanted to hear them. Chances are you might be telling yourself some stories inside your head over and over and over again that are not serving you. Okay? At the moment, I'm starting to read this really cool book called Radical Relevance by Bill Gates. Now, whatever we are putting in, you probably heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? Whatever we're feeding our mind, it's like planting seeds and watering it And you've probably heard the idea, you fertilize the soil and beautiful plants grow. Well, guess what? Sometimes these stories we're telling ourselves are old weeds, and they need to be weeded. You need to just get out your tools. And the thing is, the first step is actually noticing that you're telling yourself the story. So think about it for a moment. Are there any stories that you're telling yourself right now that aren't serving you? I used to say to myself things like, let me see, before I knew any better, by the way, I used to say things like, certainly as a 16-year-old, I used to say I was too tall because all the guys hadn't caught up, right? So at 16, I made it to 5'11". So at 16, I was probably at least 5'9" or 5'10", or 180 centimeters is where I got to. So the guys hadn't caught up, right? So I felt tall and gangly and didn't know what to do with my body. And I felt a little awkward. My mum did say to me, sweetheart, you'll thank me in the long run. You'll be really happy in this body of yours. And I've got to tell you, I am. But, there are lots of stories we get told as well when we're children. And it's whether or not they serve us or whether they don't. In my book here, Become Your Number One Fan, How to Silence Your Inner Critic and Live the Life of Your Dreams, I had when I had my big black hole and was ready to take my own life, when I chose life, I really did some inner work. And what I did was I did a behaviors and a beliefs audit. So not like just like a financial audit, but a behaviors and belief one. Oops, sorry about that. I have one of those desks that goes up and down. So we'll just take me back up a bit. So yes, just like a financial audit, I really encourage you to do a beliefs audit. Take a moment as soon as you've got time, just, create some quiet time and sit down and go, what behaviors and beliefs did I take on board from my mum? And which ones serve me and which ones don't? What did I take on board from my dad? Which ones serve me, which ones don't? Or my caretaker, or my grandparents, or my foster parents, or whoever brought you up. We're just sponges as tiny babies, right? We absorb the good, the bad, and everything in between, and the ugly. And as adults, it's our job to really decide who we want to become. When we're little, we just want to be like mum or dad or somebody that's in our sphere of influence, right? But as an adult, we can choose and we can go, right, I don't want to keep on repeating the same old patterns. You can write your own blueprint. So if there's anyone else other than Todd here live, please pop in the comments. And I think, Todd, you're in, I've forgotten where you are. Illinois, I think. But if anyone else is here live, please pop in the comments where you're coming in from. So getting back to these stories, I really want you to start thinking about what behaviors and beliefs did you take on board, because then they become stories. Do you getting this? Like, they become stories that we habitually keep on telling ourselves. So if you grew up with a family that were really, really poor, one of two things probably happened for you. It's not usually anything in between. It's either I'm going to make something of my life and I'm not going to end up like this, or I'm going to repeat the same pattern. There's a wonderful saying, two men stood behind prison bars. One saw mud, the other saw stars. Right? So there is also a story about two sons. The father was an alcoholic, was in jail, was a deadbeat. And one of the sons went on to be highly successful. And the other son repeated his father's pattern. And they asked both sons, why do you think you turned out the way that you turned out? And guess what? They both said the same thing. Both had the same upbringing, right? They both said, well, with a father like I had, of course I turned out this way. One chose to write a brand new blueprint. The other one just repeated the same pattern like a mouse on a wheel, going round and round and round. The stories we tell ourselves are based on something probably that somebody told us or we told ourselves, and we just keep on telling ourselves that over and over and over again. So I really invite you, if you're a coach, do you have a story going on in your head that you don't have? And if you're a basketball coach, perhaps you wouldn't say it out loud, of course, to your team, but maybe in your head you're going, oh gosh, I don't have the depth in my team. My bench just don't have the strength. Because guess what? The more you breathe life into that, the more you tell yourself that, the more they're going to be that way. Let's face it, right? If you are an athlete and you say to yourself, oh, I'm never going to beat XYZ, or I'm never going to reach that PB, chances are you're not going to. So mindset is just, it's so deep and yet it's so simple. It's the first step is actually noticing what patterns are happening habitually because they're happening unconsciously, right? So I'd really, really love you to start noticing. It's like having a little set of antennas up here. You know, like when a butterfly is navigating its way through a garden, it's its little antennas that are guiding it to keep it safe, right? So from this moment on, I really invite you to actually have a set of antennas up. And the next time that you find yourself talking to yourself in a way that is kind of not so nice or defeatist, or let's face it, just not lifting yourself up, just notice it and maybe jot it down. And then when you've got time, just think about it and go, where and when did I start taking on board this story? Because guess what? It's probably not true. And we can always start writing a brand new story. I was also going to talk to you today about, let me just think. Oh, yes. Last week, I was interviewing Dan Nazinga, and he was sharing his journey of really not initially taking up basketball to become a basketball player. He was a soccer player, pardon me, and how his journey of becoming a professional basketball player, even though he had to kind of practice when his dad wasn't home, etc., etc. But what we were talking about as well was I shared that I got told at 16 when I decided I wanted to be a professional dancer. I'd only done jazz and tap for 3 years, 6 classes a week from the age of 13 to 16. And I decided I wanted to be a professional dancer. I was so inspired by this African-American group called Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope that had come out to Australia. They were triple threats. They could sing, dance, and act. And I was in the audience and I just went, that's what I want to do. And my mum said, oh, sweetheart, you're not going to get there at your little suburban school and you're going to need to take up ballet. So I'm all excited. I ring up a big city ballet school and I say, I'm going to be a dancer and I don't want to be a ballerina, but I know I need my ballet and I need to get to intermediate standard in ballet. Can I please come in and do a beginner class? And she said, yes. So in I go, and she put me in with 8-year-olds. Now, at 16, as I said, I was probably at least 5'9", probably a little taller, and she puts me in with these little 8-year-olds, and it's all in French. Now, I'm learning French in school, but it wasn't the French that they were talking about. The only word I could that I recognized was demi. I knew demi meant half, but all the terms in ballet are in French, right? So I'm copying, and I thought I was doing a beautiful job. I was just mimicking everything because I had no idea what the words meant. And she pulled me into her office afterwards, and I was so excited. I said, "How did I go?" Because I thought I went great, right? And I said, "How did I go? Can I go into a class with older kids now?" And she stood there. It's as if it happened the other day, really. It was so long ago. She stood there. She put her hands on her hips. She looked at me and she goes, "Well, let's face it, darling. You're too old. You're too tall. You've got flat feet. You don't have enough turnout in your hip socket. You might as well forget it." I was like, "What? Forget it? What does she mean, forget it? I know I've got a dancer inside." Obviously, cried all the way home. My dad was a former Australian cycling champion. Now, he didn't have the meaning of the word give up in his vocabulary. So when I get home and I stop sobbing, Dad says to me, "Darling, you just haven't found the right school yet." So I bravely get out the phone book and I find another big ballet school, and in I go and I do another class. 3 big schools told me the same thing, and it was like I gave up on my dream. But my dream didn't give up on me. Has anyone ever had anything like that happen? So I met a guy when I was 21, just turned 21, who was English. He was out in Australia on a working holiday. And I followed him back to London. That didn't work out. And I went, well, I might as well do a dance class while I'm here. And so I got out the phone book and I found Una Billings TV School of Dance in Hammersmith. I rang up and I spoke to Una. I said, "I'm here visiting. I'd love to come and do some casual classes." And she said, "Yes, of course, of course." So I go in and I do some casual classes. And after one of the classes, Una pulled me aside and she said, I was Kathy back then. She says, "Kathy, you should try out for full time." Guess what I said to her? "Oh, no. I'm too old. I'm too tall. I've got flat feet and I don't have enough turnout in my hip socket." And she said, "Darling, you've got the height, you've got the body, you've got the musicality, you've got the stage presence, you've got the flexibility. You just got to work on your ballet. We'll get some private ballet lessons for you." Fernand Monet was the ballet master for the Royal Ballet when they went on tour. Guess who got private lessons with him? 6 months later, I turned professional, proved all those nasty critics wrong. And just like Dan and I were talking about, it takes one person aside from our parents. It can't be mum and dad, because when mum and dad are encouraging us and telling us we're going to be amazing or we've got this talent, we just go, "Oh yeah, that's just mum and dad saying that." We need one person to really believe in us for us to develop to our true potential. So if you're a coach, you have a huge responsibility. Are you destroying your players' self-esteem and self-worth? And then they're telling themselves stories that they're never going to be good enough? Or are you lifting them up? And are you actually being that one person for them? You know, when I had my School of Performing Arts for many years back in Australia, we used to win regional, state, national championships year in, year out, get honours and honours with distinction for our exams. And you know what? It wasn't always the most gifted student that went on to become a professional. It's interesting, you know, sometimes when something comes really easily, they didn't want to follow through with it. Whereas someone had some natural ability like I did, but I had to work like crazy at my ballet to get there. It was the same thing with some of my students. And I really, really, really encouraged them all to be a best version of themselves that they could be. So if you're a leader of any sort, whether you're a sports coach, whether you are a leader in business, whether you're a mum or dad, guess what? You're a leader. You have children, right? Are you lifting people up, or are you kind of putting them down. And then what happens then is they start telling themselves a story that they're not good enough, not clever enough, don't deserve whatever it is they're going after. Or are you lifting them up and giving them a story that they can keep on saying over and over and over and over in their head? Because honestly, the stories we tell ourselves and believe are what's driving our life. That's what's running the show. Well, the unconscious is actually running the show. However, what we are telling ourselves is also what's guiding our life, if that makes sense. So, if anyone is on live, if they would like to ask me anything, I would be more than happy to answer it. And maybe if you're still on, Todd, is there anything that resonated with you, or is there anything you'd like to add to it? Because I know this is also your expertise. I'm going to wait a moment and see if anyone comments. Have a little look over here. Doesn't look like anyone's going to communicate with me live. No comments. Oh, no worries at all. Okay, well, what I might do is just recap what we've been talking about and end a little early. Last week I went over time. This week I'm going to go a little early. I think it's just really intuitively what I feel is on my mind that day that I feel hopefully is valuable to the audience. So, what we've been talking about, if you didn't hear from the top, is stories. As children, a lot of us get told stories. We have a storybook. This is my very, very old, tattered, beautiful favorite storybook from childhood. And then we start believing in those stories. For example, little girls get told that, they're a princess and there's a prince who's going to come and rescue them and ride off on a white horse and all these crazy things that, of course, life is not about. The stories that we have been talking about today are the stories that you tell yourself, or perhaps you tell other people, which then perpetuates whatever they've been saying to themselves. And is it a positive or is it a negative story? Because we've all got a responsibility to lift each other up. It's so important. We are all made up of atoms. We're all vibrating at a particular frequency. We draw to us what we are sending out. It's just basic physics, right? So if you want to be, you've probably heard that saying, we are the sum of the five people we spend the most time around. So if you are kind of hanging out with people that are kind of deadbeats or just treading water and basically doing life on autopilot, then that's probably the same energy that you're going to be in. But if you really are in that energy and want to shift, guess what? It's just a choice. It's literally just a choice. When I was suicidal and then I chose life, I had a vision of where I wanted my life to go. I really did. And I was like Humpty Dumpty. I fell off the wall into 1,000 pieces. I was having anxiety attacks every day. I didn't want to get out of bed. My rose-colored glasses had been really replaced by these gray, murky ones. All I could see was what was wrong in the world. But when I chose life, I really dived in and I did the work. I had already read Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, but I hadn't really dived in. I hadn't dived in and really learned to love myself from the inside out. I was still looking for validation from everyone else out here, especially my dad, because he was, this jock, this amazing Australian, champion, for validation that I was good enough, clever enough, attractive enough, slim enough. Basically, never had a problem there. I was skinny as a child, but you know what I'm saying? So it's just absolutely crucial when we are down to move. I had a friend that would come and drag me out of the house and play tennis with me. And I just knew it was like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. But eventually I just had this vision. I had a vision of the woman I wanted to become. And every day it was like brick by brick by brick by brick of building myself up. And in the process, building the mindset that I needed, and the self-esteem and the self-worth and the self-love and the self-belief to reach that target. And honestly, if you'd have told me all those years ago, that was about 35 years ago, if you'd have told me all those years ago that I would be living in the US, that I would have been interviewed on every major TV network across the US, that I'd get to meet Oprah, that I'd sit next to Wayne Dyer on the way to my first book signing, that I get to meet Louise Hay and say, thank you so much for giving me the tools to rebuild my life. That was way beyond my expectations, but I did have this vision of being a master facilitator and trainer. Did I know I was going to be a mindset coach? No. Who was my first mindset coach, though? My dad. He didn't know it, but we absorb so much as children. I absorbed so much, and I learned so much about the way he lived his life more than what he actually chose to teach me. So if you are a parent, what are your children learning from the way that you live your life? What stories do you tell yourself? What stories are you telling them about how they can achieve their dreams in their life? And what stories are you telling if you have a team of athletes, or perhaps you have a business team? Really make sure that you are always. I was listening to Ed Mylett the other day. I listen to Ed Mylett's podcast every time I'm in the car going anywhere. And he was saying, live your life with so much positive anticipation that something fabulous is just about to happen. Because that energy, how I was talking about vibrations, that energy is vibrating out, and just expect that it's about to happen. Because honestly, this stuff works. It's 101 of manifesting, really. You have to lift your energy and your vibration level to what it is you want to draw to you. So, yes, it's all about energy. And I hope that what this particular episode in this podcast has encouraged you to do is just have that little set of antennas up there and be mindful and go, is that a useful story that I'm telling myself? Or is that a useful story that I'm telling my son or my daughter or my team or my business team? And if it isn't, guess what? Just like that, you can choose to say something different, to start writing a brand new story. Speaking of which, next week I'll be interviewing someone special. Not quite sure who it is yet, but it'll be someone wonderful. And then the following week, I'm going to be teaching you how to write a script, which is part of my 5-part strategy of the inner game of winning. And that is a script where you are writing literally a movie script for an event or how you want your life to go. So thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Please, if you enjoyed this, share it, subscribe, comment on whatever resonated with you, and I will swing back, and obviously people will look at this when it's not live, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much. Ciao for now.
Thanks for watching The Champion's Mindset with Kathryn Orford. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week.